Welcome to Pure Hustle Podcast. I'm Mike.
And this is Orlando. And a little sad.
Sad. We just finished up the holidays. We should be happy. Well, I mean, we still got a New Year's coming up, but we finished all the Q4 craziness.
That's what I mean. Like, I am in major withdrawal right now.
But you get to slow down. This is a good thing.
I don't like slowing down. Slowing down makes you have to think about life. But anyways, hey, this episode, wow, I'm starting off this episode really slow. This episode is about transitioning out of Q4.
Yeah, and as you can tell,
kind of like an addict has to,
for some people, getting out of Q4 is really hard, right? Like Orlando's, he might be going through grief. I mean, we probably could have done an episode about the 5 stages of grief, leaving Q4. But the first thing I think everybody needs to do, take a deep breath and take a break, right? Because you've been going so hard. And, Orlando, for those of you who don't know, I'm sure we've kind of talked about it a little bit on the podcast, but we recorded a whole bunch of stuff ahead of time. We recorded, a lot of Novembers and Decembers just within a few weeks because we knew Q4 was going to be so crazy. Orlando's going to be busy. I'm going to be busy. It's such a crazy time of the year. And it's hard because you're trying to get everything done. You're trying to really ramp up and maximize your time so that way you're not leaving any money on the table. You're getting as much profit as you can get. And then there comes a point when it's done and there's that maybe a break from the excitement, but then also you can finally take a break and say, I need to sleep. I can catch up. I can spend some time with family. I can rest a little bit because there's really not much more you can do, right? Like now it's time to start getting back into regular reselling mode. And sometimes you do need to take, a day or two away from reselling so that you can reset and get back into that regular reselling mode.
So, and also remember that right now things are dead, right? For the most part, right? Amazon has slowed down, eBay's to a halt. Even us, we release shorter videos because we know not all of you, and we appreciate every single one of you is watching our videos or listening to our podcast, right? So why not take a break with everybody else, right? Go on that vacation you wanted, right? I myself, probably by the time that this episode drops, I'm not going to be here. I'm going to be traveling with my kids and experiencing winter in parts of the Midwest. And so, because things have slowed down, I don't feel the urgency, and it's good to take a break. It's good to recharge. But then there's also a lot of good opportunities to buy stuff that is on clearance.
Yeah. So take a break, but don't take too long of a break.
Yeah. So, and what I mean by that is I'm a big believer that you got to be careful when you buy clearance, but there are a lot of stores, even like thrift stores is kind of interesting. But off price stores, or you also have, your regular retail stores, that there's a lot of good deals out there. Now, what do I mean by that? These are probably items that you have to buy and you have to hold for a while, right? So they're so cheap that it doesn't cost you a lot to get a lot of these items. Some of these items that I pick up after Christmas, I don't sell until closer to Christmas the next year, but I buy so much at such a cheap cost, it's definitely worth me picking up.
Yeah. I used to work at Joann's Fabrics when I was in high school, and right after Christmas, and it would get more and more, right? So the week after Christmas, things would go on 25% off sale. And then 3 weeks after Christmas, everything's on 50% sale. And then a month or two after Christmas, if there's still a small little Christmas aisle left, things are 90% off, and it's just random stuff that's left. But I would have customers that's when they would come in and they would buy everything. They would just have carts full of stuff, and they're like, I'm done with all my Christmas decorations for next year. And so capitalize on that, right? Know that, hey, get the good deal, but yeah, you're probably going to have to hold on to this stuff. It's probably not going to sell again until closer to Christmas, if it does at all. But when you're buying things pennies on the dollar, it can be worth it if you've got the storage for it.
100%. Now, at the same time, don't spend all your profits. And you could do that both ways, right? You can spend it all on yourself, have a grand old vacation, or you could buy a bunch of inventory, but there's also taxes around the corner, right? And we don't talk much about taxes, but I will say with this, you got to be careful, right? Because you may have made a ton of money. You don't know what your tax outlook's going to be. And you want to just make sure you kind of have, a little bit of money set aside, and just to make sure that, when taxes come around, you don't feel like, you ended up losing money because now you have a bunch of taxes and you already spent all that money.
Yeah. And it's a good time of the year to kind of start prepping for taxes, as far as, do you have your paperwork in order? Do you have everything in order?
Your mileage?
Yeah. Get all that stuff done now, because you're probably not shipping out as many things. You're probably not sourcing as much. So use some of that time, right? Like don't just say, hey, I went from working 80 hours a week to now I'm only working 10 hours a week. Still work 40 hours a week reselling if you're doing it full time, but just use maybe a week of that to get ready, make sure all your tax stuff is in order. And you also don't want to spend your profits because, January rolls around and all of a sudden you're going to have a bunch of returns, right? You're going to have a lot of things, especially if you're selling things on Amazon. That used to be
returnary.
It was the worst when I was a kid, and it was, you'd get stuff for Christmas and there'd be like one thing. It's like, this shirt didn't fit, or this, whatever, this is the wrong version of this, or this game didn't work, or whatever it was. And you go to like a Walmart return line and it's like out the door, right? Because people, for whatever reason, are just returning tons of stuff. Sometimes because people get stuff as a gift and they're like, yeah, I'd rather have the money, right?
Yeah.
Instead of returning it. And sometimes it's, yeah, that was a bad buy. I probably shouldn't have bought that. Or I want a different one. I want a different color, whatever it is. And so you're going to have a lot of returns. And so if you spent all of that profit that you had and you weren't prepping for those returns, it's kind of like the old saying, like, don't count your chickens until they hatch. Yeah. You really got to know, is this real profit? Is it realized yet? Or are you kind of just hoping that it's profit?
The government might tax you either way.
Yeah, that's true.
No, there's something you got to think about too, is that, remember, Amazon, anything that somebody has purchased after October 1st, they can still return up to January 31st. Right. So you might think you're in the clear. You haven't heard from anything, and out of nowhere, and this happened to me last year, I had a lot of returns of people that bought Christmas themed items.
Like, oh yeah. Can you imagine
like advent calendars? So shady, but it happened.
Advent calendars. I've had that. Or you sold a Christmas sweater, and it was a good Christmas sweater, and Christmas sweaters are expensive right now. And so you sold it for $40 or $50 for, one you got for $2 at a thrift store. Someone wore it to all 3 Christmas parties that they went to, and they're like, you know what? I don't need this sweater. This sweater didn't fit. Well, was it supposed to fit? Is this something you're going to wear year round, or is this just something? So people are going to use and return, and that's not all the returns you're going to get. You're going to get some legitimate returns, but you also got to expect you're going to have people returning things that they use, but they only use it for that season and they're done with it. And so they borrowed it from you.
So be ready for the 2 taxes and returns. So encouraging. All right. Hey, and this last one, I think this is super important. I love the fact that we record the podcast, because I actually do listen to our podcasts that we make every Q4, just so I know, okay, what are the things that I miss? What are some blind spots? But, you all don't have that luxury, right? You all have your own separate experience. So I strongly encourage you to take notes. So, for example, on my phone, I use Google Keep, and it allows you to take a lot of notes. And I take notes of all the stores that I went through when I did retail arbitrage. And I kind of have like little notes, like parking here is an issue, or this store right here gave me a hard time as a reseller, or this store, no one seems to know about it. I always need to go to the store, or, other things like, hey, this year I used a van. I actually like this van better. Like, for example, this past Q4, I ended up with a cargo van, but it wasn't a cargo van. It was a passenger van, but this was really easy to remove the seats. And cargo vans cost more money than passenger vans, even though they're the same size. So I got this passenger van for half the price of a cargo van, but it has actually more space in the cargo van I would have rented. Right. So I'm always going to take note. Hey, next year, don't just look for cargo van, look for this exact model, or think about how much cash do you need, or, were you short on shipping supplies? Use this time when things are calm as a time of reflection to take notes that you can go back to next Q4.
Yeah, if you're not reflecting, you're really missing out. This is a business practice you should do all the time. You should debrief. I mean, companies do this, right? They're always doing debriefs. What worked, what didn't work, what can we try again next year? And so you want to make sure you're doing the same thing, because you're a business. Treat yourself like a business. Understand that if you want to succeed as a business, you got to spend some time reflecting. And it's easy when it's just a hobby to just kind of go with the flow. But eventually you got to say, I'm going to do a legitimate debrief here and figure out what worked, what didn't work. Maybe even get some outside support, right? We've talked about the Discord that we're going to be starting, hopefully the start of the new year, right? So as we get into January, you'll hear more about it. But maybe this is a good time to ask for some advice, right? Like, I did this and this, like, what did you guys do? Like, can I get some support? Like, I seem to really struggle with this aspect of Q4, and get some outside inputs that you can make sure that your next Q4 is even better.
Yeah. So of all these though, take a break, enjoy the new year. And with that being said, make sure to be real,
be relevant,
and be reselling leads.
Peace.